The wine glass trembled between my fingers as I tried to steady my breathing. My ex-husband's voice cut through the elegant hum of Bellissima, the upscale Italian restaurant where I'd been working for just under 6 months. The crisp white tablecloth beneath my hands felt suddenly abrasive, my skin hypersensitive as anxiety coursed through my veins. Still waiting tables at 32, Emma? I'm not surprised. You always lacked ambition. Daniel's words sliced through me with practiced precision, the same cutting tone he'd perfected during our 5 years of marriage. I glanced at the blonde beside him, his new girlfriend, I presumed, who tittered behind manicured fingers. Her diamond bracelet caught the light, reminiscent of the jewelry Daniel had always promised me but never delivered. "Your usual table is ready, Mr. Winters," I managed, proud that my voice betrayed nothing of the humiliation burning inside me. The scent of his familiar cologne, sandalwood and bergamot, triggered memories I'd spent 18 months trying to erase. "Actually," Daniel said, leaning back in his chair, his custom suit stretching across shoulders that had once felt like home, "I think we'll take that one." He pointed to the corner table, the best in the house, reserved for special guests, a table I couldn't give him. "I'm sorry, that section is reserved," I replied, the rehearsed smile pinching my cheeks. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Come on, Em, for old time's sake. Or are you still bitter that I left?" He turned to his date. She never could accept when things were over, part of why it didn't work out. The humiliation burned hotter. 3 other servers hovered nearby, pretending not to listen while clearing tables with exaggerated focus. I'd told none of my coworkers about my divorce, about how Daniel had drained our joint account before leaving me with nothing but debt and trust issues. "Your table is this way," I repeated, turning to lead them through the dimly lit restaurant, past the soft glow of candles and murmuring couples. "I heard you had to move back in with your mother," Daniel continued, his voice deliberately loud enough for nearby diners to hear. "Pathetic, isn't it, Caroline? This is what happens when you marry for love without a prenup." My knees weakened. How did he know about my mother's place? I'd been living in her spare bedroom since losing our apartment, working double shifts to save for my own place while helping with her medical bills. The uniform I wore, a crisp white blouse and black skirt, suddenly felt like a billboard advertising my failure. That's when I noticed him. He sat alone at the corner table, the one Daniel had demanded. I'd never served him personally, but every staff member knew who he was. Salvatore Russo, owner of half the properties in this part of the city, including a rumored stake in Bellissima itself. His presence was always announced by the 2 men who entered first, security who scanned the restaurant before he arrived, and the hushed whispers that followed. Tonight, he wore a charcoal suit that looked hand-stitched. His dark hair swept back from a face that belonged in Renaissance paintings. Angular jaw, sculpted cheekbones, eyes the color of aged whiskey. Despite the summer heat outside, he showed no sign of discomfort. His posture relaxed yet commanding. Even seated, his authority was palpable. What caught me off guard was that he was watching me. Not glancing, not the casual observation of a bored diner. Watching. His eyes locked with mine across the room with such intensity that the rest of the restaurant seemed to fade into silence. His gaze held neither pity nor amusement at my humiliation, just a dark, calculating interest that made my skin prickle. "Still driving that beat-up Honda?" Daniel continued behind me, oblivious to my distraction. "I always told you it was embarrassing. Caroline and I just got a new Miss." The single word cut through Daniel's monologue like a blade. Salvatore Russo had raised 1 finger, not even his entire hand, and every server in the vicinity froze. My heart hammered against my ribs as his security detail shifted, suddenly alert. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. "Sir?" I managed, my voice barely audible. "These guests seem dissatisfied with your service." His voice was deeper than I expected, with the barest hint of an Italian accent. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding." Daniel, sensing an opportunity to complain to management, stepped forward. "Yes, we requested the corner table and I wasn't speaking to you." Salvatore never took his eyes off me, his tone causing Daniel to physically recoil. Then, with deliberate slowness, Salvatore moved the leather portfolio that had been resting on the chair opposite him. "Sit with me." It wasn't a request. The restaurant went so quiet I could hear the ice settling in water glasses. Daniel's face flushed red, but the presence of Salvatore's security, one stationed by the door, another near the bar, kept him silent. I should have been frightened. Every instinct screamed that Salvatore Russo was dangerous. The rumors about his connections, the way even our restaurant manager deferred to him, the subtle threat that hung around him like expensive cologne. Yet in that moment, faced with Daniel's cruelty and my own humiliation, Salvatore seemed like sanctuary. "Your table, Mr. Winters, is this way," I said to Daniel, gesturing to Marco, another server, who hurried forward to escort them. I smoothed my skirt with trembling hands and approached Salvatore's table. Up close, he was even more intimidating. A thin scar traced his left eyebrow, and a heavy watch gleamed on his wrist. I caught the scent of something rich and masculine. Not cologne exactly, but something more elemental. His hands, resting casually on the table, bore a single platinum ring and immaculate nails. "Thank you," I said quietly, as I slid into the seat across from him, unsure what else to say. His eyes studied me with uncomfortable thoroughness. "Your ex-husband," he stated rather than asked, his voice low enough that only I could hear. I nodded, wondering how he knew. Men who publicly humiliate women they once claimed to love reveal much about their character. He picked up his wine glass, swirling the dark red liquid. None of it admirable. Before I could respond, Sophia, our head server, rushed over. "Mr. Russo, I apologize for the interruption. Emma will be taking her break now," he interrupted, not looking at her. "Bring her whatever she'd like." Sophia hesitated, glancing between us with obvious concern. I should have been offended at being discussed as if I weren't present, but something in his manner, the absolute certainty that his word was law, made protest seem impossible. "It's fine, Sophia," I assured her. "Could you ask Marco to cover my section for 20 minutes? After Sophia departed, an awkward silence fell. I was acutely aware of Daniel watching from across the room, his expression a mix of confusion and anger. "You don't know who I am," Salvatore finally said, studying me with that same unsettling intensity. "Everyone knows who you are, Mr. Russo." A smile touched his lips, brief, contained, yet somehow transforming his severe features. "They know a name, a reputation." He leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, Emma, what exactly did he take from you?" The directness of the question startled me. How do you know my name?" He gestured to my name tag with a slight tilt of his head. "Right," I murmured, feeling foolish. "You didn't answer my question. I shouldn't have told him. This man was a stranger, and likely a dangerous one, yet something in his steady gaze made the truth spill out. Everything. Our savings. The apartment, my credit score. I twisted the simple silver band I still wore on my right hand. My grandmother's ring. The one thing Daniel hadn't managed to take. My dignity, apparently. Salvatore's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes darkened. And what did the law do? Nothing. The accounts were joint. Legally, he was entitled to empty them. The bitterness I'd been suppressing rose to the surface. 5 years together, and I never thought he'd... I stopped myself. "I'm sorry. You don't need to hear this." "I asked," he said simply. A waiter appeared with another glass of wine, placing it before me. I hadn't ordered it, but Salvatore nodded at the glass. "Drink. It will steady your nerves." I took a sip, surprised by the rich complexity that flooded my tongue. It wasn't the house wine we served by the glass. This was something far more expensive. "Why did you ask me to sit with you?" I finally managed. He considered me for a long moment. "Because you have sad eyes, Emma, and because men like him," his gaze flicked briefly toward Daniel's table, "should not be allowed to feel they've won." There was something in his voice, a hardness, a finality, that sent a shiver down my spine. This wasn't normal conversation. This was something else entirely. "You don't know me," I said softly. "I know enough." He checked his watch. Platinum, like his ring. "You remind me of someone I once knew. Someone who also trusted unwisely." Before I could ask what he meant, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it briefly, then placed it face down on the table. I have a proposition for you, Emma. My body tensed immediately. I'd heard enough rumors about powerful men and vulnerable women to be wary. I'm not that kind, he cut in, his voice suddenly cold. Don't insult us both. Chastened, I nodded for him to continue. I'm hosting a charity gala this Saturday at the Laurent Hotel. I find myself unexpectedly without a companion for the evening. His eyes held mine. I would like you to accompany me. The request was so unexpected I nearly laughed. Me? I'm a waitress. You're a woman who has been wronged. He took a sip of his wine, watching me over the rim of his glass. I dislike seeing injustice go uncorrected. And taking me to a gala corrects it how? For the first time, something like genuine amusement crossed his features. Your ex-husband works for Hayes Investment Group, does he not? Lawrence Hayes will be attending my gala, with all his senior employees. My breath caught. Daniel had recently been promoted to senior financial advisor at Hayes, a fact he'd made sure to mention on social media where he knew I would see it. This is vengeance, then? I asked, uncertain. This is opportunity. Salvatore leaned forward, his voice dropping. Show up in a dress that makes him regret every decision he's ever made. Let him see you on my arm. Let him wonder why, of all the women in this city, Salvatore Russo chose his discarded wife. The offer was tempting. So tempting my hands shook, the chance to show Daniel I wasn't broken, wasn't destitute and desperate as he believed. The petty, wounded part of me that had cried into my pillow for months wanted to say yes immediately. But the rational part knew better. Why would you do this for a stranger? I asked. His expression remained unreadable. Perhaps I'm not as altruistic as I'm presenting. Perhaps I simply want the most interesting woman in the room on my arm. I'm not interesting. I'm ordinary. No, he said with such conviction I almost believed him. You're surviving. There's nothing ordinary about that. From across the restaurant, I could feel Daniel's eyes boring into us, could sense his confusion and growing anger. In one unexpected moment, the power dynamic between us had shifted. Say yes, Emma, Salvatore urged, his voice a velvet command. Let me show you what it feels like to be valued. It was madness, complete madness to consider going anywhere with this man. Yet as Daniel loudly ordered another bottle of champagne, as his date laughed at something surely at my expense, as my feet ached from a double shift that would barely cover my mother's medication this month, I found myself nodding. Yes, I whispered, sealing my fate with a single word. I'll go. Salvatore's smile was slow and satisfied, the look of a man who always got what he wanted. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a business card, sliding it across the table. My driver will collect you at 7. Text this number your address and dress size. He stood in one fluid motion, straightening his already immaculate jacket. Don't disappoint me, Emma. As he walked out, his security falling into step behind him, I clutched the heavy cardstock between my fingers. The restaurant resumed its normal rhythm, conversations rising again like the tide. Only I remained frozen, staring at the elegant black script on white cardstock. I'd just agreed to accompany one of the most dangerous men in the city to an event where I would face my ex-husband. All because of a moment of wounded pride and unexpected rescue. As I pocketed the card and stood to resume my shift, I caught Daniel's venomous gaze from across the room. For once, I didn't look away first. Whatever game Salvatore Russo was playing, I'd just become a willing piece on his board. And despite every warning bell ringing in my head, I couldn't bring myself to regret it. Not yet, anyway. The Laurent Hotel gleamed like a diamond against the night sky, its facade illuminated by strategically placed spotlights that highlighted the century-old architecture. I sat in the back of a sleek black Bentley, my fingers nervously smoothing the silk of a dress that cost more than 3 months of my rent. We've arrived, Miss Bennett. The driver, a broad-shouldered man named Anton, who hadn't spoken more than 10 words during our 20-minute drive, glanced at me in the rearview mirror. His eyes betrayed nothing, but I sensed he was assessing me, perhaps wondering why his employer had sent him to collect a waitress from a modest apartment on the unfashionable side of town. Thank you, I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. The dress had arrived yesterday in a box bearing the name of a designer I'd only seen in magazines, a deep emerald creation that hugged my body before cascading to the floor in liquid waves. With it came a pair of heels I'd spent hours practicing in, afraid of stumbling in front of Salvatore and his elite guests. No note accompanied these gifts, just a time and Anton's name. My mother had watched with worried eyes as I'd transformed myself in our small bathroom, applying makeup with trembling hands. "Emma, honey, are you sure about this?" she'd asked, leaning against the doorframe, her bathrobe belted tightly around her too-thin frame. "Men like that, they're used to taking what they want. It's just one night, Mom," I'd assured her, brushing mascara onto my lashes. One night of pretending to be someone else. But as Anton opened my door and offered his hand, as the cool night air carried the scent of wealth and privilege to my nostrils, I wondered if one night would be enough. Or too much. The hotel lobby bustled with beautiful people in exquisite clothing, all heading toward the grand ballroom where Salvatore's gala was being held. I followed Anton through the crowd, acutely aware of curious glances. Did I look as out of place as I felt? Could they sense the polyester uniform hanging in my closet at home? Anton led me to a private elevator, accessed with a key card. "Mr. Russo is waiting upstairs," he informed me as the doors closed, sealing us in polished mahogany and brass. He had business to attend to before joining the main event. My heart stuttered. I'd assumed we would meet in the ballroom, surrounded by others. The idea of facing Salvatore alone, in some private suite, sent a fresh wave of anxiety through me. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse foyer. Anton gestured for me to step out, then remained behind as the doors closed. I stood frozen, taking in the opulence around me, the marble floors, the fresh orchids arranged in crystal vases, the floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city lights. "You're punctual. I appreciate that in a woman." I turned to find Salvatore watching me from the entrance to what appeared to be a living room. He wore a tuxedo that made Daniel's custom suits look mass-produced in comparison, the crisp white of his shirt contrasting with his olive complexion. His dark hair was styled impeccably, and a faint scent of spice and cedar followed him as he approached. "The dress suits you," he observed, circling me slowly. The weight of his gaze made my skin prickle, as though he were cataloging every detail of my appearance. "Turn around." It wasn't a request. I complied, completing a slow rotation, the dress whispering against the marble. "Perfect," he pronounced, coming to stand before me again. Up close, I noticed the faint lines around his eyes, the only indication he might be in his mid-30s rather than younger. "You clean up admirably, Emma Bennett." "Thank you for the dress," I said, finding my voice at last. "It's beautiful." "Beauty deserves beauty." He reached out, adjusting the thin strap on my shoulder with a casual intimacy that made me shiver. "Are you nervous?" "Yes," I admitted, seeing no point in lying. "I don't belong in this world." A smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Few do, by birth. The rest of us create our place in it." He stepped back, appraising me once more. "You haven't asked what this charity event is for." The realization made me flush. I'd been so consumed with thoughts of Daniel, with the fantasy of walking into that ballroom on Salvatore's arm, that I hadn't considered the actual purpose of the evening. "I'm sorry. What cause are we supporting tonight?" "Children's oncology research." Something flickered in his eyes, a shadow quickly suppressed. "My mother died of cancer when I was 13. It was not a gentle passing. The unexpected personal revelation caught me off guard. This wasn't the practiced charm of a man seducing a vulnerable woman. There was a rawness to his admission that felt genuine. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "My mother has been battling lymphoma for 2 years. It's why I moved back home. To help with her care." Salvatore's expression shifted subtly. "Then you understand better than most why tonight matters." He offered his arm. "Shall we? I believe your ex-husband has already arrived downstairs." My stomach tightened at the mention of Daniel. "How do you know so much about him, about me?" "Information is currency, Emma. I make it my business to be wealthy in all forms." He guided me toward the elevator. "Tonight, you are my guest, my companion. That means every eye will be on you, assessing your worth because you're on my arm." "That's a lot of pressure," I murmured. Pressure creates diamonds. The elevator doors opened at his approach. "Remember that you're the most valuable thing in the room tonight. Because I'm with you?" I asked, stepping inside. His eyes met mine in the mirrored wall. "Because I chose you when I could have chosen anyone." The descent to the ballroom was swift, but the weight of his words lingered. This wasn't just about showing Daniel I had moved on. This was about being claimed by someone powerful enough to make others take notice. As the doors opened, revealing the glittering ballroom beyond, Salvatore's hand settled at the small of my back, a touch both proprietary and steadying. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over tables draped in white linen, while a string quartet played softly from a raised platform. Champagne flowed freely, carried on trays by servers in attire similar to what I wore at Bellissima. "Mr. Russo." A distinguished older gentleman approached immediately, hand extended. An exquisite event, as always. "Senator," Salvatore acknowledged, shaking the man's hand. "May I introduce Emma Bennett, my companion for the evening." The senator turned to me with rehearsed charm, but I caught the flicker of curiosity in his eyes. I was an unknown quantity in a room where everyone was accounted for. "A pleasure, Miss Bennett. How did you and Salvatore meet?" Before I could fumble a response, Salvatore smoothly interjected. "Emma works at Bellissima. She caught my attention with her resilience in difficult circumstances." The truth, presented in such a way that it sounded like a fairy tale, rather than the reality of a waitress being rescued from humiliation. "Resilience is an undervalued quality," the senator agreed, though his expression suggested he found the story quaint rather than impressive. As Salvatore guided me deeper into the ballroom, more introductions followed. Business owners, politicians, old money families, all greeting Salvatore with respect tinged with caution. I smiled and nodded, hyper-aware that I was being assessed and likely found wanting. Then I saw him. Daniel stood near the bar, champagne flute in hand, laughing with colleagues. He wore a new tuxedo. I could tell from the way he kept adjusting the cuffs, always preening in new clothes, and had gotten a haircut since I'd seen him at the restaurant. The blonde wasn't with him tonight. Instead, he was surrounded by men in similar suits, all bearing the confident air of those who handled other people's money. "Ah," Salvatore murmured, following my gaze. "There he is." His hand at my back pressed slightly firmer. "Ready to make him regret his life choices, Emma?" I wasn't ready, not at all. But I nodded anyway, straightening my posture as Salvatore led me directly toward the group. Daniel's back was to us, giving me precious seconds to compose myself. "Lawrence?" Salvatore greeted a silver-haired man I recognized from Hayes Investment Group's website. "I trust you've brought me good news about those property acquisitions?" Lawrence Hayes turned, his face lighting with recognition and something like wariness. "Salvatore, of course the paperwork is nearly complete. Just a few more signatures," and he broke off, noticing me. "I don't believe I've had the pleasure." "Emma Bennett," Salvatore introduced me, his arm now sliding possessively around my waist. "Emma, this is Lawrence Hayes, CEO of Hayes Investment Group. They handle some of my more conventional investments." At the sound of my name, Daniel turned. The shock that registered on his face was everything I'd imagined and more. His eyes widening, champagne sloshing dangerously close to the rim of his glass, I watched the progression of emotions. Disbelief, confusion, then the slow dawn of realization as he looked between me and Salvatore. "Emma," he managed, his voice strangled. "What are you doing here?" Salvatore's fingers tightened fractionally on my waist. "You know my companion, Daniel?" His tone was pleasant, but something dangerous lurked beneath. Daniel's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. She's my ex-wife." Lawrence Hayes looked between us with sudden interest. "Is that so?" "Small world." "Very small," Salvatore agreed. "Daniel was just in Bellissima the other night. Weren't you, Daniel? Though you seemed less than pleased with the service." The color drained from Daniel's face. He knew, they all knew, who Salvatore Russo was, what he represented. The room's atmosphere had shifted subtly, the other men from Hayes stepping back slightly as if to disassociate themselves. "A misunderstanding," Daniel stammered. The restaurant was busy, and yet I found the service exceptional. Salvatore cut in smoothly. So exceptional, in fact, that I invited Emma to accompany me tonight. His thumb traced small circles against the silk at my waist, a gesture both intimate and clearly visible to everyone watching. Sometimes true value isn't immediately apparent to those without discerning tastes. My cheeks burned, but the humiliation I'd felt at the restaurant had transformed into something else, a heady power born from the naked fear in Daniel's eyes, from the possessive way Salvatore held me. Emma always had excellent taste in restaurants, I said, finding my voice at last. It's why I chose to work at Bellissima after we separated. The atmosphere is so much more refined than the places Daniel preferred. It was a small jab, referring to Daniel's habit of choosing restaurants based on their proximity to sports bars, but Salvatore's appreciative glance made me bold. "You're working there as a server?" Lawrence asked, his surprise poorly disguised. "Among other things," Salvatore answered for me. "Emma has been consulting on some special projects for me. Her insight has been invaluable." The lie rolled off his tongue with such conviction that for a moment even I almost believed it. Daniel's expression darkened, suspicion replacing his initial shock. "What kind of projects?" he asked, a hint of his old condescension returning. "Emma's background is in English literature. Hardly relevant to your business interests, Salvatore." "On the contrary," Salvatore replied, his voice dropping to a register that made the hairs on my arms stand up. "Emma possesses qualities I find essential in my inner circle: loyalty, discretion, resilience." He lifted his free hand, brushing a strand of hair from my face with deliberate tenderness. "Intelligence that sees beyond surface appearances." The implication hung in the air, that I was not merely arm candy but someone privy to Salvatore's confidences, someone he trusted. The expression on Daniel's face shifted again, this time to something like alarm. "If you'll excuse us," Salvatore continued, "Emma and I should greet the other guests. Lawrence, I'll have my lawyer call yours tomorrow about those properties." As we moved away, I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "That was just the beginning," Salvatore murmured close to my ear, guiding me through the crowd. "The night is young, and I want everyone to see us together, especially him." For the next hour, Salvatore kept me at his side, introducing me to business associates, politicians, and socialites. With each introduction, his hand remained at my waist, occasionally sliding lower to rest at the curve of my hip. He ensured my champagne glass was never empty, that I was included in every conversation, that all eyes, especially Daniel's, followed our progress around the room. It was intoxicating, being the chosen one of the most powerful man present. I found myself standing straighter, speaking more confidently, even as I remained acutely aware of the fantasy we were creating. "Dance with me," Salvatore said, as the quartet began a slow waltz. It wasn't a request. He led me to the center of the dance floor, one hand clasping mine, the other settling at the small of my back. He moved with the natural grace of someone raised in the spotlight, guiding me effortlessly through steps I barely remembered from a college formal dance class. "You've been watching him all night," Salvatore observed, his lips close to my ear. "Does it satisfy you, seeing him unsettled?" "Yes," I admitted, the champagne making me honest. "Is that terrible of me? It's human, to want those who hurt us to suffer in return." His hand splayed wider against my back, drawing me closer. "But revenge is a poor substitute for power, Emma." "What do you mean?" "Your ex-husband took your security, your confidence. Tonight, he sees you elevated beyond his reach." Salvatore's eyes held mine, intense and searching. "But what happens tomorrow, when the dress goes back in its box and you return to Bellissima? Will his shock be worth the crash that follows?" The question pierced the champagne bubble I'd been floating in. Tomorrow, I would be back in my black skirt and white blouse. Back to double shifts and my mother's medical bills. Back to reality. "You're saying I'll regret this," I murmured, suddenly aware of how many eyes were on us, how many whispers followed our movement across the floor. "I'm saying one night of revenge is fleeting." His fingers tightened on mine. "But a complete transformation, that would destroy him." My heart stuttered. "What are you suggesting?" The music shifted, and Salvatore drew me even closer. my body now flush against his. I could use someone like you, Emma. Someone overlooked, underestimated. Someone with nothing left to lose. Use me for what? His smile was slow and dangerous. Let's discuss that privately, later. Before I could respond, I felt his body tense slightly. Following his gaze, I saw a man approaching, tall, silver-haired, with the confident stride of someone used to command. Unlike the other guests who waited for Salvatore's acknowledgement, this man moved directly toward us, interrupting our dance without hesitation. "Salvatore," the man greeted, his accent distinctly Eastern European. "A word." Salvatore's expression hardened for a fraction of a second, before smoothing into polite acknowledgement. "Mikhail, I wasn't aware you were on the guest list. A last-minute addition," Mikhail replied, his eyes sliding to me with cold assessment. Private matters require discussion. The tension between the two men was palpable, electricity crackling in the narrow space separating them. Without looking at me, Salvatore said, "Emma, would you mind getting us some fresh champagne? I need a brief moment with an old associate." I nodded, stepping away from the security of his presence, feeling suddenly exposed in the emerald dress that marked me as Salvatore's companion. As I made my way to the bar, I sensed eyes following, some curious, some dismissive, some calculating. Quite the entrance you made tonight. I turned to find Daniel beside me, his earlier shock replaced with thinly veiled anger. Up close, I could smell the champagne on his breath, see the slight flush across his cheekbones that indicated he'd had too many. "Daniel," I acknowledged coolly, signaling the bartender for 2 glasses. "Enjoying the party?" "What the hell are you doing with Salvatore Russo?" he hissed, leaning closer. "Do you have any idea who he is? What he does?" "He's been nothing but a gentleman to me," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Unlike some men I've known." Daniel grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin. "This isn't a game, Emma. Russo is dangerous. Whatever he's told you, whatever he's promised, it's not worth it." I yanked my arm free, fury rising in my chest. "You don't get to pretend concern for my welfare, not after what you did." "What I did was leave a failing marriage," he snapped. "What you're doing is getting involved with a man who ruins lives for sport. Why do you think Hayes is so nervous tonight? Half our clients are terrified of crossing Russo's interests." "Maybe they should be more careful about who they cross," I retorted, accepting the champagne flutes from the bartender. Daniel stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Has he fucked you yet? Is that what this is about? Revenge via the most dangerous man you could find?" The crude question hit like a slap. Before I could respond, a hand settled on Daniel's shoulder, not Salvatore's, but Anton's, the driver who had brought me to the hotel. "Mr. Russo suggests you step away from Miss Bennett," Anton said quietly, his massive frame dwarfing Daniel's. Daniel's face contorted with fury and fear. "Tell your boss to find another pawn." "Emma's not cut out for his world." "That will be all, Mr. Winters," Anton replied, his grip visibly tightening until Daniel winced. As Daniel retreated, shooting me one last warning glance, Anton turned to me. "Mr. Russo apologizes for the interruption. He asks that you join him in the private lounge. I'll escort you." The champagne glasses forgotten, I followed Anton through a discreet door at the side of the ballroom and down a corridor lined with artwork worth more than I would earn in a lifetime. We stopped at a heavy wooden door guarded by 2 men who nodded to Anton and stepped aside. The room beyond was intimate, leather sofas arranged around a low table, a fire burning in a marble hearth despite the warm evening. Salvatore stood alone by the window, silhouetted against the city lights, a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. "Leave us," he instructed Anton without turning. The door closed with a soft click, sealing us in private luxury. "Your ex-husband accosted you at the bar," Salvatore said, still facing the window. It wasn't a question. "You saw?" I asked, suddenly conscious of how he seemed to know everything that happened around him. "I see everything concerning you, Emma." He turned then, his expression unreadable. "Did he frighten you?" "No," I answered truthfully. "He tried to warn me about you." Salvatore's laugh was soft and without humor. "How noble of him, and what terrible things did he say?" I hesitated, uncertain how to navigate these waters. He implied your business interests aren't entirely legitimate. And do you believe him? Salvatore moved closer, stopping when barely a foot separated us. His presence seemed to fill the room, making it difficult to think clearly. I believe everyone in that ballroom fears you, I said carefully. And yet they court your favor. Fear and respect are close cousins. He reached out, his fingers tracing the line of my jaw with feather-light precision, sometimes indistinguishable. I should have stepped back, should have thanked him for the evening and asked to be taken home. Instead, I remained frozen, mesmerized by the danger and possibility he represented. What did you mean before? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. About using me? His hand dropped to the side of my neck, thumb resting at the pulse point where my heartbeat betrayed my nervous anticipation. I meant exactly what I said. I need someone loyal, someone overlooked, someone with nothing left to lose. His eyes held mine. Someone like you, Emma Bennett. For what purpose? I pressed. To be my eyes and ears in places I cannot go. To be above suspicion. His thumb moved in a slow circle against my skin. To belong to me. In all ways that matter. The possessiveness in his voice should have repelled me. Instead, it ignited something primal. The desire to be claimed, to be valued, to be protected after months of vulnerability. And if I say yes, my voice trembled despite my efforts to control it. What then? Salvatore's eyes darkened. Then you enter my world completely. No more waiting tables. No more financial worries. Your mother's medical care provided for. His hand slid to cup the back of my neck. In return, you are mine. Exclusively mine. A kept woman, I breathed, the words both thrilling and terrifying. A partner, he corrected. I have mistresses, Emma. What I need is someone I can trust. The blunt honesty caught me off guard. Why me? You could have anyone. Because you have sad eyes, but you haven't surrendered. Because you serve champagne to men who don't deserve to breathe the same air as you, yet you do it with dignity. His gaze burned into mine. Because from the moment I saw him humiliate you, I wanted to possess what he was foolish enough to discard. It was a confession of obsession, not love. A dangerous proposition from a dangerous man. Yet as the fire crackled and the muffled sounds of the gala continued beyond the door, I found myself weighing not whether to accept, but what I would become if I did. I need to think, I whispered. Salvatore nodded once, releasing me. You have until tomorrow night. I'll send Anton for your answer. He moved back to the window, dismissal clear in his posture. For tonight, we return to our performance. Your ex-husband should leave with no doubt about who you belong to now. As if summoned by those words, Anton appeared at the door, ready to escort me back to the ballroom and the fantasy we had crafted for public consumption. One more night of pretending before I had to decide whether to make the fantasy permanent. And as Salvatore offered his arm once more, as we stepped back into the glittering crowd with his hand possessively at my waist, I caught Daniel watching us with naked fear in his eyes. Fear not for himself, I realized with sudden clarity, but for me. The morning after the gala, I awoke to sunlight filtering through thin curtains and the distant sound of my mother's television in the living room. For a moment, I lay still, the emerald dress hanging on my closet door, the only evidence that last night hadn't been a dream. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from an unknown number. Your decision, 8 p.m. tonight. Simple. Direct, leaving no room for negotiation or delay. I pressed the phone to my chest, memories flooding back, Salvatore's hand at my waist, the fear in Daniel's eyes, the promise of a life where financial worries wouldn't consume my every waking moment, where my mother's medical care would be guaranteed, where I would belong to someone powerful enough to remake my world. Emma? My mother's soft knock preceded her appearance in the doorway. She looked paler this morning, the treatments taking their toll. How was your evening with the mysterious Mr. Russo? I sat up, trying to arrange my thoughts into something that wouldn't worry her. It was interesting, opulent. She studied me with the perceptiveness that illness had only sharpened. And dangerous, I imagine. She moved to sit at the edge of my bed, her bathrobe hanging loosely on her thinning frame. You had that look when you came home last night. The same look you had before you ran off to marry Daniel. This isn't like that, I protested, though I wasn't entirely convinced myself. No, she agreed, surprising me. It's worse. Men like Salvatore Russo don't pursue waitresses for their conversation, Emma. She took my hand, her fingers cool against my skin. Whatever he's offering, remember there will be a price. If only she knew how right she was, and how tempted I was to pay it. I have to get ready for work, I said, slipping from beneath the covers. My shift at Bellissima started at noon, giving me precious little time to process everything before facing the real world again. My mother nodded, rising slowly. Just promise me you'll be careful. I can't lose you too. The words hit like a physical blow. After my father's death 3 years ago, and her diagnosis shortly after, we had only each other. My decision wouldn't affect just me. I promise, I whispered, knowing it might be a promise I couldn't keep. Bellissima was quiet for a Tuesday lunch service, the dining room half empty as I moved between tables with practiced efficiency. My uniform felt strange after the silk and luxury of last night. The orthopedic shoes a jarring contrast to the designer heels Salvatore had provided. Table 7 is asking for you specifically, Sophia told me during a lull, curiosity evident in her expression. A Mr. Hayes. My stomach dropped. Lawrence Hayes, Daniel's boss. I smoothed my apron with trembling hands and made my way to the corner table where the silver-haired executive sat alone, examining the wine list with studied casualness. Mr. Hayes, I greeted him, professional smile firmly in place. Welcome to Bellissima. He looked up, assessing me with new interest. Without the emerald dress and Salvatore's arm around my waist, I was just another server, yet he'd sought me out deliberately. Miss Bennett. Thank you for taking my table. He closed the menu, his manner direct. I'll have the grilled salmon and a glass of whatever white wine you recommend. But first, I'd appreciate a moment of your time. I glanced around the half-empty restaurant. Of course. He gestured to the chair opposite him. Please, sit. It was inappropriate. Servers didn't sit with customers, but refusing seemed unwise. I perched on the edge of the seat, hands folded in my lap. I'll be direct, Hayes said, leaning forward. Your presence with Salvatore Russo last night raised some concerns. I don't see how my personal life concerns Hayes' investment group, I replied carefully. His smile was thin. Normally it wouldn't, but Daniel's reaction was noticeable. And given Salvatore's recent interest in acquiring properties our firm has stakes in, I can't help wondering about the timing. The implication was clear. He suspected I was being used to manipulate Daniel to get information about Hayes' investments. Mr. Hayes, I was invited to the gala as Mr. Russo's companion. Nothing more. I maintained eye contact, refusing to be intimidated. If Daniel was uncomfortable seeing me there, that's unfortunate, but hardly my concern. Hayes studied me, searching for deception. Daniel says you're not the type to get involved with someone like Russo, that you're too principled. A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. Daniel emptied our joint accounts and left me with nothing but debt when he decided our marriage was inconvenient. His assessment of my principles is hardly reliable. Something like respect flickered in Hayes' eyes. Fair enough. He sat back, the interrogation apparently complete. I hope, for your sake, you know what you're doing with Russo. He isn't known for his forgiving nature when crossed. The warning hung between us as I rose. I'll put your order in right away, Mr. Hayes. As I walked back to the kitchen, my phone vibrated in my pocket. Another text from the unknown number. Your mother's appointment has been moved to Dr. Kessler at Memorial. Car, waiting outside. I froze, pulse racing. My mother had an oncology appointment this afternoon, at the county hospital, with a doctor we'd waited 3 months to see. Dr. Kessler was the city's leading oncologist, with a closed practice and a waiting list years long, and Salvatore had already arranged it, before I'd even given him my answer. I found Sophia in the kitchen. I need to leave, I said, my voice urgent. Family emergency. Her eyes widened with concern. Of course. Is it your mother? Yes, but it's complicated. I'll explain later. I was already untying my apron, reaching for my bag in the staff room. Minutes later, I burst through Bellissima's front doors to find a black sedan idling at the curb. The driver, not Anton this time, but a woman with a severe bob and perfect posture, opened the rear door without a word. "Who are you?" I demanded, not moving toward the car. "Maria. I work for Mr. Russo." Her voice was clipped, professional. "Your mother is already in the car. We're going to be late for her appointment if we don't leave now." Sure enough, I could see my mother's confused face peering from the back seat. I approached cautiously, opening the door wider. "Emma, what's happening?" she asked as I slid in beside her. "This woman showed up saying my doctor appointment was changed. I tried to call you, but it's all right," I assured her, taking her hand as the car pulled away from the curb. "It's been arranged by a friend." "Mr. Russo," Maria supplied from the front seat, meeting my eyes in the rearview mirror. "Dr. Kessler is his personal physician. The doctor has reviewed your mother's files and believes there may be treatment options your previous doctors overlooked." My mother turned to me, alarm replacing confusion. "Emma, what have you done?" "Nothing," I said quickly. "Not yet. I searched for words that wouldn't frighten her further. This is a gesture of goodwill, or a demonstration of power, a reminder of what Salvatore could provide, and what accepting his offer would mean." The ride to Memorial was silent, my mother's hand clutching mine with surprising strength. When we arrived, we were escorted past the crowded waiting room directly to a private suite where Dr. Kessler, a distinguished man in his 60s with kind eyes and confident movements, was waiting. "Mrs. Bennett, Miss Bennett," he greeted us warmly. "I've been reviewing your case. I believe we have options to discuss." For the next hour, he outlined an experimental treatment protocol, one normally reserved for patients with significant financial resources or connections. The survival rates he quoted were double what we'd been told by previous doctors. "How much will this cost?" my mother asked, ever practical despite the hope now brightening her eyes. Dr. Kessler's smile was practiced. "The financial aspects have been arranged. You're to focus on getting well, Mrs. Bennett." As the appointment concluded, a nurse appeared with a schedule of treatments beginning the following week. My mother was led away for preliminary blood work, leaving me alone with Dr. Kessler. "Mr. Russo is very interested in your mother's recovery," he said, his tone careful. "It's rare for him to involve himself in a patient's care so directly." I swallowed hard. And if things changed between Mr. Russo and myself, would my mother's treatment continue? The doctor's expression revealed nothing. I couldn't say. I only know that he was explicit about providing the best care possible, regardless of cost. The message couldn't have been clearer. My mother's life was now a bargaining chip. When we returned home that afternoon, my mother sat me down at our small kitchen table. "Emma, you need to tell me what's going on. Who is this man, and why is he paying for my treatment?" I couldn't meet her eyes. "He's offered me a position, working for him." "What kind of position?" Her voice was sharp with suspicion. "A companion, an assistant of sorts." The half-truths stuck in my throat. She reached across the table, forcing me to look at her. "Do you know what they called women like that in my day?" "Mistresses. Kept women." Her fingers tightened on mine. "Is that what this is?" "It's complicated," I whispered. "No, it isn't." She released my hand, sitting back. "He's buying you with my treatment, and the worst part is, you're considering it." Tears burned behind my eyes. "What choice do I have, Mom? We're drowning in medical debt. This treatment could save your life, not at the cost of yours," she countered fiercely. "I won't have my life extended by watching you sell yourself to a man like that." "You don't understand what he's offering," I said, rising from the table. "Security. Protection. A life where we don't have to struggle for every basic necessity. And what's the price? Your freedom? Your safety?" She shook her head. "Your father would—" "Dad isn't here," I cut in, harsher than I intended. "He left us with nothing but memories and an insurance policy that barely covered the funeral costs." I'm trying to be practical. The hurt in her eyes made me instantly regret my words. But before I could apologize, my phone buzzed again. 7 p.m. Decision time moved up. Car coming. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. The shift in timeline felt deliberate, calculated to catch me off balance after the emotional whirlwind of the day. "That's him, isn't it?" my mother asked quietly. I nodded, unable to speak. She stood slowly, steadying herself against the table. "Whatever you decide, Emma, remember who you are. Your soul isn't for sale, no matter how pretty the package." As she retreated to her bedroom, I remained frozen in our kitchen, the clock on the wall ticking away the minutes until I would have to give Salvatore my answer. An answer that had become infinitely more complicated now that he'd demonstrated exactly what he could offer, and what I stood to lose. The sleek black car arrived precisely at 7, idling outside our apartment building with quiet authority. I'd changed 3 times, finally settling on a simple navy dress, respectable but unremarkable. If this was to be a business arrangement, I would present myself accordingly. "I won't wait up," my mother said from her bedroom doorway, her face drawn with worry in the aftermath of today's extensive tests. "Just remember what I said." I kissed her cheek, inhaling the familiar scent of her lavender soap. "I love you," I whispered, words that felt simultaneously inadequate and all-encompassing. Anton opened the car door as I approached, his expression as impassive as ever. "Miss Bennett." The drive was silent, the darkening city sliding past my window like scenes from a life I was leaving behind. We didn't head toward the restaurant or the Laurent Hotel, but into the exclusive North Shore neighborhood where mansions stood behind wrought iron gates and private security. The car turned into a curved driveway, approaching a modern structure of glass and stone perched at the edge of a cliff overlooking the water. Unlike the ostentatious homes we'd passed, this one projected quiet power, understated elegance that required no explanation. "Mr. Russo is waiting in the study," Anton informed me as we entered a soaring foyer of marble and light. "This way." I followed him through the immaculate house, noting the absence of personal touches, no photographs, no mementos, nothing that revealed the man who lived here. The art on the walls was museum quality but emotionally distant, abstract paintings and ancient sculptures behind subtle security glass. Anton knocked once on a heavy wooden door before opening it and gesturing me inside. The study was warm compared to the rest of the house, walls lined with leather-bound books, a fire crackling in a stone hearth, deep leather chairs arranged around a low table bearing a crystal decanter. Salvatore stood by the windows that overlooked the water, silhouetted against the last purple light of sunset. He wore dark trousers and a white shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows, revealing strong forearms and the glint of an expensive watch. "Emma." He turned as the door closed behind me, Anton withdrawing silently. "Right on time." "You moved up our appointment," I said, remaining near the door, maintaining distance between us. After arranging my mother's medical care without my consent, a slight smile touched his lips. "You're angry." "I'm cautious," I corrected. "You've demonstrated your power and resources quite effectively today." He crossed to a small bar, pouring amber liquid into 2 crystal tumblers. "Would you prefer I hadn't arranged the appointment? Dr. Kessler is difficult to access on short notice. I would prefer understanding your motives before my mother becomes dependent on your generosity." He approached, offering one of the glasses. "My motives are exactly as I stated last night. I want you in my life, in a specific capacity." When I hesitated, he added, "It's just scotch, Emma. If I wanted to compromise you, I wouldn't need chemicals." The blunt statement sent a chill down my spine, even as I accepted the drink. "And what capacity is that exactly? You mentioned being your eyes and ears. What does that entail?" He gestured to one of the leather chairs, taking the one opposite as I sat. "I have business interests across the city, legitimate enterprises that occasionally face complications from less legitimate forces." "You mean criminal elements," I said flatly. His expression revealed nothing. "I mean, competitors who don't always respect boundaries. My visibility makes it difficult for me to move unnoticed, to hear unguarded conversations, to understand what happens below the surface. And I could?" I took a careful sip of the scotch, the liquid burning a path down my throat. "You're intelligent, observant, and most importantly, underestimated." He leaned forward slightly. "People reveal themselves around beautiful women they believe have no power. especially when those women appear to belong to someone else. Understanding dawned, cold and clear. You want me to be seen as your mistress, your possession, while actually gathering intelligence for you. Among other things, he studied me over the rim of his glass. You would live here, accompany me publicly, have access to everything my protection provides. In exchange, you would be loyal only to me, alert to information that might affect my interests, and occasionally placed in positions to observe specific individuals. Spy, you mean? The word fell between us, ugly and undisguised, if you prefer that term. He seemed unbothered by my directness, though I consider it more selective observation. I set my glass down, pulse racing. And my mother's treatment? Guaranteed, regardless of your decision tonight. His statement surprised me, and he must have seen it in my expression. I'm not a monster, Emma. I don't use terminal illness as leverage. Dr. Kessler will continue her care whether you walk out that door or stay. The unexpected concession destabilized me. I'd been prepared for ultimatums, for the harsh bargaining of my mother's life against my compliance. This apparent generosity was harder to resist. Why? I asked, genuine confusion in my voice. Why make that guarantee when it diminishes your negotiating position? Something like respect flickered in his eyes. Because I want your choice to be clear-eyed. If you stay, it's because you choose my world over the one you've known, not because I've left you no alternatives. I rose, needing movement to process his words. And if I choose to walk out that door? Then Anton drives you home. Dr. Kessler continues your mother's treatment, and our paths likely won't cross again. He remained seated, watching my restless movement. I don't pursue unwilling participants, Emma. Yet everything you've done since the restaurant has been calculated to ensure my willingness, I pointed out. The dress, the gala, Daniel's humiliation, my mother's treatment, all designed to show me what you could provide. His smile was slow, appreciative. You see clearly. That's another quality I value. I stopped by the fireplace, watching the flames consume a log. If I agreed, what would my life look like, practically speaking? You would move in immediately. A separate suite of rooms would be yours, with privacy when you desire it. He set his glass down, steepling his fingers. You would have a generous allowance, a car and driver, new wardrobe appropriate to your position. Your financial concerns would end. And us? What would be expected between us? The question was difficult to voice, but necessary. His expression remained unchanged. I find you attractive, Emma. I won't pretend otherwise, but physical intimacy isn't a condition of our arrangement. But it's anticipated, I pressed. It's a natural progression I would welcome, should you come to desire it. His honesty was disarming, but I have no interest in reluctant companions, in business or pleasure. I turned back to the fire, buying time to organize my thoughts. The arrangement he proposed wasn't what I'd feared, not quite the kept woman my mother had warned about, but something more complex. A partnership with clearly defined roles, mutual benefits, and boundaries I could potentially navigate. What about Daniel? I asked finally. Was that just for show? Or do you have genuine business with Hayes Investment Group? Both, Salvatore admitted. Hayes manages several legitimate property investments for me. Your ex-husband's position there was coincidental, a detail that became useful when I saw how he treated you at Bellissima. The casual admission that our initial meeting had been genuine, not some orchestrated encounter, somehow made the entire situation more believable. How would I explain this to my mother? I asked, the practical question revealing my shifting consideration. She already suspects the worst. Salvatore rose, moving to stand near me by the fire. Tell her I've offered you a position as my personal assistant and social coordinator. It's close enough to the truth and explains the benefits you'll receive. I looked up at him, searching his face for deception, and when she asks why you chose me, of all people, tell her I value loyalty and discretion above experience, that I saw how you handled adversity with dignity. His gaze held mine, unnervingly direct, that I believe in investing in people others have undervalued. The words resonated more deeply than I wanted to admit. After months of feeling worthless, discarded, the recognition of value, even from someone like Salvatore, was powerfully seductive. I'd want to see her regularly, I stipulated, not just during treatments, and if she objected strongly to this arrangement, I'd need to reconsider. He nodded once. Reasonable terms. Family loyalty is something I understand. I took a deep breath, weighing everything. The security he offered against the unknown risks, my current struggles against an uncertain future in his world. I have conditions of my own. Interest flickered in his eyes. I'm listening. I won't do anything illegal, I stated firmly. I'll observe, report what I hear, accompany you as needed, but I won't be involved in anything that could result in criminal charges. Understood. I want everything in writing, I continued. The terms of my employment, my mother's medical care, the financial arrangements. A contract that protects us both. He smiled slightly. You're negotiating. Good. And I want a clear exit clause, I finished. If at any point this arrangement becomes untenable, I need to know I can leave safely, with enough resources to support myself and my mother's continued care. Salvatore studied me for a long moment. You've given this considerable thought. I've had to learn to be practical, I replied. Daniel taught me that much, at least. He extended his hand. We have a preliminary agreement, then. My lawyer will draw up the paperwork tomorrow. I looked at his offered hand, understanding that this was a turning point from which there would be no easy return. Taking it meant stepping into his world, a world of power, protection, and undeniable danger. One last thing, I said, not yet taking his hand. I need to know why me, truly. Not the flattering version, but the real reason. Something shifted in his expression. A momentary glimpse behind the controlled facade. Because when I saw him humiliate you, I recognized someone surviving despite betrayal. Because you have nothing left to lose, which makes you both vulnerable and dangerous. He paused. And because I've learned that the most valuable loyalties come from people who've seen the worst of humanity and still choose to believe in something better. It wasn't romance. It wasn't even particularly kind. But it held an honesty that finally tipped the balance. I placed my hand in his, the contact sending an unexpected current through my body. We have an agreement. His fingers closed around mine, warm and strong. Welcome to your new life, Emma Bennett. As the fire crackled beside us, as the last light faded from the sky beyond the windows, I made a silent promise to myself. I would use this opportunity to rebuild my life and secure my mother's future. But I would never lose sight of who I was, or forget that in Salvatore Russo's world, everything came with a price I was now committed to paying. 3 months passed with the speed of a fever dream. My life transformed so completely that sometimes I would wake in my luxurious suite, a space larger than our entire apartment had been, and momentarily forget how I'd arrived there. My mother had moved into the guest house on Salvatore's property 2 weeks after I accepted his offer. Initially resistant, she'd gradually relented as Dr. Kessler's treatment began showing promising results. The latest scans revealed significant tumor reduction, and color had returned to her cheeks for the first time in years. I still don't entirely approve, she'd told me just yesterday during our weekly garden lunch. But I can't deny he's been generous. An understatement. Salvatore had not only covered her medical care, but had also arranged for a live-in nurse, a specialized diet prepared by his personal chef, and transportation to every appointment. He treated her with unfailing courtesy during their infrequent interactions, never mentioning the nature of my position in his household. As for that position, it had evolved in ways I hadn't anticipated. I'd expected to be paraded around at social functions, listening for useful information while playing the role of decorative companion. Instead, I'd become something far more integrated into Salvatore's daily operations. You have good instincts, he'd observed after I'd noticed a pattern in the behavior of one of his restaurant managers. Subtle discrepancies that eventually revealed an embezzlement scheme. I want you in more meetings. From there, my responsibilities expanded. I reviewed contracts beside him, sat in on business negotiations, accompanied him to property acquisitions. Always watching, always listening, noting who seemed nervous, who avoided eye contact, who who spoke too quickly or too slowly. "You see things others miss," Salvatore had said one evening, as we reviewed my observations about a potential business partner. "You notice the human elements while my other advisors focus on numbers." It was true. Years of serving others, first Daniel, then restaurant patrons, had taught me to read micro-expressions, to sense mood shifts, to predict needs before they were voiced, skills born of survival that now served a different purpose. Salvatore kept his word about our physical relationship. He never pressured, never demanded, maintaining a professional distance that was occasionally punctuated by lingering looks or casual touches that sent electricity through my body. We shared dinners, conversations, proximity, but nothing more. Until last night, I stood at my bedroom window now, watching dawn break over the water, my body still humming with the memory of his hands, his mouth, the weight of him above me. It had been inevitable, perhaps, this crossing of the final boundary between us. 3 months of tension building like a slow-burning fuse. The catalyst had been unexpected. A chance encounter with Daniel at an art gallery opening where Salvatore was a major donor. I'd been examining a sculpture when a familiar voice spoke behind me. "So, it's true. You really have become Russo's pet project." I'd turned to find Daniel watching me, his expression a mix of disdain and poorly concealed curiosity. 3 months had changed him too. A new haircut, expensive watch, designer suit that screamed promotion. "Daniel." I'd kept my voice neutral, conscious of Salvatore across the room, deep in conversation with the gallery owner, but undoubtedly aware of everything happening in his periphery. "Enjoying the exhibition? Cut the act, Emma." He'd stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Everyone knows what you are to him. The question is whether you know what he is." I'd smiled, the poised, enigmatic expression I'd perfected during my time with Salvatore. "I know exactly who he is. The better question is whether you know who I've become." Something in my tone had made him step back slightly. "Hayes is considering pulling our investments from Russo's projects. There are rumors." "Careful, Daniel." I'd sipped my champagne, maintaining eye contact. Business discussions in social settings can be easily misinterpreted, especially when they involve my employer. His face had flushed. "You're actually loyal to him after everything he's dragged you into." "The difference between Salvatore and you," I'd said quietly, "is that he values what I bring to his life. You only valued what you could take from it." Before Daniel could respond, I'd felt a presence behind me. Salvatore, materializing as if summoned, his hand settling possessively at the small of my back. "Mr. Winters," he'd greeted Daniel, his tone pleasant, but eyes cold. "Discussing business at an arts function? How gauche." Daniel had paled visibly, "Just catching up with my ex-wife." "Former wife," Salvatore had corrected, his thumb tracing small circles against my spine. "And current right hand. Emma has become invaluable to my operations." His smile hadn't reached his eyes. "Perhaps you should mention that in your report to Hayes." The implication that Salvatore knew about Daniel's assignment to gather information had sent him retreating with mumbled excuses. As soon as he was out of earshot, Salvatore had turned to me. "You handled him well?" he'd observed, his hand still at my back. "He's been instructed to approach you, to see if you might be persuaded to share information about my business." I'd raised an eyebrow. "You knew and didn't warn me?" "I wanted to see where your loyalties lay without prompting." His gaze had been intent, searching. "You didn't disappoint." The drive home had been charged with unspoken tension, Salvatore's hand resting on my knee in the back of the car, his thumb occasionally brushing against the silk of my dress in a way that seemed both deliberate and unconscious. When we'd arrived home, I'd expected him to retreat to his study as usual. Instead, he'd followed me toward my suite, stopping me in the hallway with a gentle hand on my arm. "You've never asked about the rumors," he'd said, his voice low in the dimly lit corridor. "About my business, my connections, the things Daniel and others have tried to warn you about." I'd turned to face him, suddenly aware of how close he stood, of the heat emanating from his body. "Would you answer truthfully if I did?" "Perhaps." His fingers had traced a path from my shoulder to my collarbone, featherlight. "Would it change anything between us?" The question hung between us, the acknowledgement that whatever I knew or suspected about his dealings, I had already made my choice to remain. No, I'd admitted, it wouldn't. His hand had cupped my face, thumb brushing across my lower lip. Why? Because you've kept every promise you've made to me, I'd whispered. Because my mother is getting better, because you've given me purpose when I had none. Not love, then, he'd said, his voice neutral. Not love, I'd agreed. Something more complicated. His kiss had been gentle at first, questioning rather than demanding, before deepening into something hungry, possession finally claimed after months of patience. I'd responded with equal fervor, 3 months of tension unraveling as his hands found the zipper of my dress as we stumbled into my bedroom, as restraint gave way to urgent need. Now, watching the sunrise paint the water gold and crimson, I wondered what would change between us. Whether last night had altered our carefully negotiated arrangement, or simply added a new dimension to it. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. I tightened the silk robe around my body before opening the door to find Salvatore fully dressed in one of his immaculate suits, looking as though he'd been awake for hours. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "There's been a development." I gestured for him to enter, conscious of my bare feet and tousled hair, the visible evidence of our night together. He remained standing, tension evident in the set of his shoulders. "What is it?" I asked, suddenly alert to the unusual gravity in his manner. "Hayes Investment Group has pulled out of 3 major projects without warning. All funds withdrawn, contracts terminated." His expression was controlled, but I'd learned to read the subtle signs of his anger. The tightness around his eyes, the barely perceptible muscle working in his jaw. "Daniel," I breathed, understanding instantly. Last night at the gallery was likely his final attempt to extract information before Hayes made their move. Salvatore's hands slid into his pockets, a gesture I'd come to recognize as him physically restraining his temper. The timing is too convenient to be coincidental. A cold weight settled in my stomach. "You think I said something? That I leaked information?" His eyes met mine, searching. "Did you?" "No." The single word emerged forceful, hurt that he would even question it. "I've been loyal to you from the moment I accepted your offer. You know that." Something in his posture eased slightly. "I needed to hear you say it. You didn't trust my answer to Daniel last night? Or what happened between us after? The hurt deepened, sharpened." Salvatore moved closer, his hand lifting to brush a strand of hair from my face. "Trust is a luxury in my position, Emma. Even with those closest to me, the candid admission stung, but I understood it. In the months I'd spent in his world, I'd seen how isolated his position truly was. How everyone wanted something from him, how every relationship was transactional at its core, including ours. "What happens now?" I asked, stepping back from his touch, needing distance to think clearly. "I need to know what Hayes is planning. Their withdrawal jeopardizes developments already underway, properties with other investors involved." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Your ex-husband is the common thread." Understanding dawned with sickening clarity. "You want me to approach Daniel, to use our history to get information?" "You're the only one who could get close enough," Salvatore confirmed. "He still watches you. I saw it last night. There's unfinished business there that we can leverage." "Leverage?" The word tasted bitter. Last night? Was that also leverage? A way to ensure my emotional investment before asking me to do this? His expression hardened. "Don't insult us both, Emma. What happened between us was inevitable from the moment you sat at my table at Bellissima. But yes, the timing is advantageous." The cold calculation behind his admission should have repelled me. Instead, I found myself appreciating the honesty, however brutal. Salvatore had never pretended to be anything other than what he was. A man who seized opportunities, who turned every situation to his advantage. "If I refuse?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Then I find another way." He maintained eye contact, unflinching. "Your mother's care continues regardless. Our arrangement stands, but my trust in your commitment would be diminished. 3 months ago, I might have recoiled from such manipulation. Now I recognized it as the currency of his world, our world. Trust was earned through action, loyalty through sacrifice. "What exactly do you need me to do?" I asked. Decision already made. Relief flickered briefly across his features before the mask of control returned. "Contact him. Suggest you have doubts, concerns about your position. Let him believe you might be persuaded to share information about my operations. You want me to play double agent," I clarified. "Pretend to betray you in order to learn Hayes's plans." "Yes." He moved to the window where I'd been standing, looking out at the water now bathed in morning light. "It's dangerous, potentially. If he suspects your true purpose..." The unfinished sentence hung between us, heavy with implication. I joined him at the window, not quite touching, but close enough to feel the heat of his body. He underestimated me once before. He'll do it again. Salvatore turned to face me, something like pride in his expression. "You've changed in these months, Emma. Grown stronger. Learned from the best," I replied, attempting lightness despite the gravity of what we were discussing. His hand found mine, fingers interlacing with unexpected gentleness. "If at any point you feel endangered, you extract yourself immediately. Promise me." The concern seemed genuine, touching something within me I'd tried to keep protected. The part that wanted to believe his interest in me transcended the practical value I provided. "I promise," I said softly. He nodded once, satisfied. "Good. We'll discuss details after you've dressed." His gaze traveled over my robed figure with renewed heat. "Though I find your current attire distracting." The tension between us shifted, business giving way to the magnetic pull that had drawn us together last night. For a moment, I considered pulling him back to bed, delaying the difficult conversation about my impending deception. Instead, I stepped back. "I need to check on my mother this morning, and you need to tell me everything about these investments. What Hayes knew, what they might be planning." Salvatore's smile was slow, appreciative, always the practical one. "Very well." He moved toward the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. "Emma?" "Yes?" Last night wasn't leverage, it was surrender. With that enigmatic statement, he left, closing the door softly behind him. I remained by the window, watching the day brighten, contemplating the dangerous game I was about to play. Daniel would be suspicious, but his ego, his belief that I'd been coerced or manipulated into Salvatore's world, would make him vulnerable. He would want to believe I was reaching out for help, that I regretted my choices, and I would use that belief against him, just as Salvatore had taught me. As I turned to prepare for the day ahead, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Elegant silk robe, hair tousled from Salvatore's hands, eyes sharper and more calculating than they had been 3 months ago. The transformation was undeniable. I had entered Salvatore's world as a victim seeking protection. I would face Daniel as something else entirely. A woman who had learned the true nature of power and how to wield it.